Jack Turner was just another soldier in the sprawling military base on Earth. He was young, fit, and eager to prove himself. His life was nothing special, just a series of drills, briefings, and occasional missions. He never imagined he would be called for something out of the ordinary. But today, something felt different. The walls of the military base buzzed with tension as officers and soldiers moved quickly from one place to another. The base was preparing for something big, and Jack had no idea what it was. His job was simple, routine, nothing that would make him stand out. But then he heard his name. "Jack Turner, report to Commander Michael's office immediately." Jack's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't been called to the commander's office since his initial training. What could this be about? He quickly grabbed his uniform and headed toward the office, the hallway feeling longer than usual. His boots echoed loudly against the cold floor. Inside the office, Commander Michaels was sitting behind a large desk, looking over a set of documents. He didn't look up as Jack entered, but gestured for him to sit. Jack obeyed, sitting nervously in the stiff chair. "You've been chosen for a special mission, Turner," Commander Michaels said without looking up. "We've been preparing for this for a while now. You're going to be assigned to an important diplomatic mission. Your skills have earned you a spot." Jack blinked. A diplomatic mission. He was just a soldier, a grunt. Why would they send him for something like that? "You'll be accompanying one of Earth's top diplomats," Michaels continued. "Lara Hayes, you may have heard of her. She's been in the news a lot lately. This is a high-profile mission, and we need someone reliable, someone who can follow orders. I believe you fit that profile." Lara Hayes. Jack had heard the name. She was known for her calm, diplomatic approach to even the most difficult situations. But what did that have to do with him? Commander Michaels finally looked up from his papers, his sharp eyes locking with Jack's. "Your job will be simple. You'll protect her, assist her during the mission, and follow orders without question." "Understood." Jack nodded, trying to mask his confusion. Protecting a diplomat sounded straightforward enough, but this felt like a much bigger deal than he was prepared for. The name, Lara Hayes, echoed in his mind, but he couldn't figure out why she needed protection. Wasn't she just a diplomat? Michaels gave him a small, approving smile. "You leave tomorrow. Get some rest, Turner. You'll need it." As Jack walked out of the office, his mind was racing. He had no idea what to expect. He had been part of military missions before, but this was different. It felt like the beginning of something much bigger, something he didn't fully understand. The next morning, Jack was up before dawn, gathering his gear. He wasn't sure what kind of weapons or supplies he'd need for a diplomatic mission, but he packed his standard-issue rifle, a sidearm, and a few basic survival items. As he made his way to the landing pad, he spotted a sleek, futuristic spacecraft waiting. It looked nothing like the standard military transport ships he was used to. This was different. It was polished, streamlined, and unmistakably advanced. The kind of ship that suggested money and power. A small group of officers were waiting beside the ship. Among them was a woman Jack recognized immediately, Lara Hayes. She stood tall, exuding an air of authority even in the calm morning light. She was dressed in a formal military suit, her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun. Her eyes, sharp and focused, seemed to see everything around her. She looked out of place among the officers. It was clear that she was not just any diplomat, she was someone important. Jack approached her, trying his best to act casual. He hadn't been briefed on what exactly his role would be in this mission. He just knew he was supposed to protect her, follow orders, and stay out of the way. That was all. "You must be Jack Turner," Lara said, her voice smooth and confident. "It's a pleasure to meet you." Her handshake was firm, and Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. She was just a diplomat, wasn't she? But there was something about her presence that made him think otherwise. Something that suggested she was more than just the face of diplomacy. "It's an honor, ma'am," Jack replied, trying to hide the nervousness in his voice. "I'm here to assist you however I can." Lara gave a small nod. "I appreciate that. We'll be relying on your training during the mission. Your job is to keep everything running smoothly and to ensure our safety. There's no room for mistakes on this one, Jack." Her words made the gravity of the situation hit Jack all at once. This was no ordinary mission. Something big was going on, and he had no idea what it was. The officers briefed Lara, and then they all boarded the ship. As the spacecraft took off, Jack glanced out the window, watching Earth grow smaller beneath them. He had been to space before, but this was different. The unknown stretched out before him, and his sense of excitement mixed with unease. Lara sat at the front of the ship, engaged in a quiet conversation with the captain. Jack took a seat toward the back, trying to process everything. What was this mission really about? Why had he been selected? He was just a soldier, not a bodyguard or a strategist, but he knew better than to question orders. He had a job to do, and he would do it. The journey was long, and the silence was heavy. Jack tried to get some rest, but sleep wouldn't come. His thoughts kept drifting back to Lara. There was something about her that intrigued him. She had an air of mystery, and he couldn't help but feel that there was more to her than met the eye. At some point during the journey, Lara stood and approached him. She gave him a warm smile as she sat across from him. "Tell me about yourself, Jack," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "You've been in the military for a while, haven't you?" Jack nodded, surprised by the personal question. He had expected this to be all business. "Yeah, I've been stationed on Earth for a few years. Nothing too exciting. I've mostly been doing routine assignments." Lara studied him for a moment. "Routine can be important. You learn discipline, focus, and patience. Those things matter when you're dealing with situations that can change in an instant." Jack nodded, but a part of him couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this conversation. What was she really trying to say? "We'll be arriving at our destination soon," Lara continued, breaking the silence. "I'll need you to be alert. There will be a lot of unknowns, and we'll have to rely on each other." Jack's curiosity only deepened. What kind of unknowns was she talking about? He had no idea what he was getting into, but he knew one thing for sure. This mission was going to be unlike anything he had ever experienced. As the ship prepared for its descent, Jack couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement mixed with uncertainty. Whatever was coming, he would have to face it, side by side with Lara Hayes, the woman who seemed to have all the answers but who still managed to keep a mysterious distance about her. The moment the ship touched down, Jack's instincts kicked in. He immediately began scanning the surroundings, noting the foreign terrain. The atmosphere felt different. He could sense that they were not alone, but there was no immediate danger. Yet, Lara stood, her posture regal. She was already thinking ahead, planning her next steps. "Let's get to work, Jack," she said, her voice calm but full of purpose. Jack followed her, his mind racing. He had no idea what this mission would bring, but something told him it was going to change everything. And he had no choice but to follow. The spacecraft glided smoothly through space, the hum of its engines barely noticeable. Jack Turner stared out of the window, watching as the stars streaked by like tiny silver dots, each one a distant world. His mind was still spinning from the events of the last few hours. Everything had changed so quickly, and now he was heading into the unknown, unsure of what he had signed up for. Lara Hayes sat in front of him, calm and collected as always. She was reviewing some documents on a screen in front of her, her fingers moving quickly across the touchpad. Jack tried to read the documents over her shoulder but couldn't make out anything. It wasn't just the strange symbols. It was the way she seemed so at ease, even though they were on a mission to a distant, unfamiliar planet. Nothing seemed to faze her. For a moment, Jack felt out of place. Here he was, a soldier who had seen his share of battles, standing in a high-tech spacecraft, following a diplomat who could have been a queen for all he knew. His job was to protect her, but he didn't even know what he was protecting her from. He glanced at Lara again. There was something about her, something that made him feel like there was more to this mission than anyone had told him. He leaned back in his seat, trying to relax, but his thoughts kept racing. What if things went wrong? What if he wasn't enough to keep her safe? He had been trained for combat, not for protecting someone like her. She wasn't just any diplomat. She was the person who controlled the fate of entire civilizations. At least, that's what it seemed like to Jack. "Jack, come over here," Lara said suddenly, pulling him out of his thoughts. Her voice was calm, yet it held a certain command that made him move without hesitation. He walked over to her side, where she had cleared a space for him to sit. "Take a look at this," she said, tapping on the screen. Jack looked at the data that was displayed. It was a map of the galaxy, with various planets and star systems highlighted in different colors. The more he looked, the more he realized how vast and complicated the galaxy was. "What's all this?" Jack asked, pointing to one of the highlighted regions. Lara glanced up at him, her eyes thoughtful. "These are the systems we're negotiating with. Some of them are allies, others are not. Some are neutral, and others are, well, they don't like us. Our job is to build alliances and ensure that Earth has a seat at the table when it comes to galactic decisions." Jack nodded slowly, trying to process the information. The galaxy was much bigger than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just about Earth anymore. There were other civilizations, each with its own interests, and Lara was the one who was trying to bring them all together. "Why me?" Jack asked, unable to hold back his question any longer. "Why was I chosen for this mission? I'm just a soldier. I don't know anything about diplomacy or whatever this is." Lara looked at him with a small smile. "Because you're reliable, Jack. You've proven yourself in the field. You follow orders and you understand the importance of your role. You may not know much about diplomacy, but you do know how to keep calm when things get difficult. That's exactly what I need right now." Jack wasn't sure he believed her. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but everything about this mission felt so out of his depth. He was used to knowing what was expected of him, but this was something else entirely. As the hours passed, Jack tried to focus on the task at hand. He kept a careful watch on the ship systems and the data coming in. There were no signs of danger, but he knew things could change in an instant. His training had taught him to be alert, but even his instincts weren't enough to prepare him for what was coming next. The crew of the ship went about their duties, and Lara continued her work. There was an air of professionalism, but Jack could sense a quiet tension beneath it all. Something was off. He wasn't sure if it was the strange environment or the feeling that they were heading into uncharted territory, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. It wasn't the kind of surveillance he was used to either. It was more personal. Like someone was waiting for them. Eventually, Lara stood up from her seat and moved to the window. Jack followed her, glancing out into the vastness of space. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the ship as it traveled through the galaxy. "We're almost there," Lara said, her voice quiet. Jack nodded, not sure what to say. He wanted to ask more questions, to understand what exactly they were getting into, but he had learned long ago that some questions didn't have easy answers. The ship began to slow as they neared their destination. Jack felt a sudden shift in the air, a sense of anticipation building in his chest. He tried to remind himself that he had been through dangerous situations before, but this felt different. They weren't just going to a new planet, they were heading into the heart of something much bigger. Lara turned to him, her eyes serious now. "Listen carefully, Jack. This is a critical moment. We don't know how things will unfold when we land. There may be those who are not happy with our presence. You need to stay alert, and no matter what happens, protect the mission." Jack nodded, taking her words to heart. He had always known how to protect people in the field, but this wasn't the same as a combat situation. This was political. He wasn't just protecting a person, he was protecting the future of Earth itself. As the ship descended toward the surface of the alien world, Jack felt his pulse quicken. The planet below them was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was covered in lush green forests and vast oceans, with cities that looked both ancient and futuristic. The atmosphere was thick with energy, like the planet itself was alive with power. The ship touched down softly, the landing gear gently connecting with the ground. For a moment, everything was still. Then the doors opened and the cool air of the alien world rushed in. Lara stepped out first, followed by Jack. The ground beneath their boots was soft and the air smelled fresh, like rain on Earth. They were met by a group of alien officials, their eyes watching them with a mix of curiosity and caution. One of the aliens, tall and slender with silver skin, stepped forward. "Welcome to our planet," he said in perfect English, his voice smooth but carrying a sense of authority. "We've been expecting you." Lara nodded, offering a polite smile. "It's good to be here. We come in peace, and we hope to build a lasting relationship between our people." Jack stood behind her, keeping his eyes peeled for anything unusual. The alien seemed friendly enough, but Jack knew better than to trust appearances. He had seen enough in his career to know that things weren't always as they seemed. As they walked toward the nearby building where the talks would take place, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The air was thick with tension, and the closer they got to the meeting location, the more he felt like something was waiting for them. They entered the building, a grand structure made of stone and metal, with tall windows that looked out over the vast landscape. Inside, the room was filled with representatives from different alien races, each one more different than the last. Some had humanoid forms, while others were more insect-like, with colorful scales and large eyes. Lara took her place at the front of the room, and Jack stood off to the side, watching carefully. He wasn't sure what was going to happen, but he knew one thing for sure: he would protect her no matter what. The meeting began, and Jack's mind stayed focused on the task at hand. But his thoughts kept drifting back to one thing: what was Lara really here for? And why had she brought him along? He was starting to think that there was much more at stake than anyone had told him. As the discussions continued, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the edge of something huge, something that could change everything. He didn't know what was coming next, but he was certain that it was going to be bigger than anything he had ever faced before. And as he watched Lara take charge of the negotiations, he realized something important. This mission wasn't just about protecting her. It was about protecting Earth's future. And no matter what happened, he would be there, standing by her side, ready to face whatever came next. The large conference room was silent, save for the low hum of the ventilation system. The air inside was cooler than outside, and it felt heavier, as though the walls themselves were filled with anticipation. Jack Turner stood near the back of the room, trying to remain unnoticed. He had seen enough diplomatic meetings in his time, but this was different. The stakes felt higher, and there was a tension in the air that he couldn't shake off. Lara Hayes was seated at the head of the table, surrounded by alien representatives. They came from different worlds, each with their own unique forms: tall, short, insect-like, and humanoid. But one thing they all had in common was that they were staring at Lara with a sense of deep respect, even reverence. Jack noticed it right away. It was like they were looking at her not as a diplomat, but as someone far more important, someone powerful. As Lara spoke to the group, Jack couldn't help but listen. She was calm, measured, and authoritative, every word carrying weight. Her voice, though gentle, commanded the room. She was in control, and the others, alien or not, followed her lead without question. Jack had never seen anything like it. The conversation was about Earth's place in the galaxy, about securing alliances with the various alien races, and about the future of intergalactic peace. But for all the words spoken, Jack still didn't fully understand what was at stake. He was just here to protect her, to keep her safe during these talks. But the longer he watched, the more he realized that there was more to this than just diplomacy. At one point, a representative from a race of massive, four-armed aliens, the Karanth, spoke up. His voice was low, like the rumble of thunder, and it carried a warning. "We will not join your alliance, Lara Hayes," the Karanth representative growled. "You are not what you seem. You think your species can command the galaxy, but we know better. We've seen your true power." The room fell into an uneasy silence, and Jack's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his sidearm. His training kicked in, but Lara remained calm, her expression unchanging. She didn't flinch. "You misunderstand," Lara said softly, her voice steady and controlled. "I don't seek power for power's sake. I seek unity. The galaxy is divided. Chaos will follow if we don't come together. I believe in the strength of all our species, not just Earth. But we must work together to ensure peace." The Karanth growled again, a low, rumbling sound. "You speak of unity, but we have heard the rumors, the whispers. Earth's true ruler, your emperor, hidden in plain sight. You are not just an ambassador. You are the one who rules them all. You are the one who has made Earth a power, and you will use that power to dominate, not unite." Jack's heart skipped a beat. The Karanth had just said what he had been wondering for hours, what he had barely dared to even think about. Earth's true ruler, Lara Hayes. For the first time, Lara's calm demeanor shifted. There was a flicker of something sharp in her eyes, a warning, but it was gone as quickly as it came. "I am no emperor," she said, her voice colder now. "I am merely a representative of Earth, striving to build bridges. If you cannot see that, then perhaps we are wasting our time." The Karanth's gaze never left her, but after a long pause, he nodded. "We will see," he muttered. The meeting continued, but Jack's mind was no longer on the discussions. His thoughts were racing. What had the Karanth meant? Was Lara really the ruler of Earth? And if so, why was she pretending to be just a diplomat? The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. As the meeting came to an end, Lara stood up, signaling for everyone to leave. Jack followed her as she made her way out of the room. Once they were alone in the hallway, Jack couldn't hold back any longer. "Lara, what was that about?" he asked, his voice low. "The Karanth said you're not just a diplomat. They said you're the ruler of Earth." "Is that true?" Lara stopped in her tracks, her back straight and her posture unwavering. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Who else would they call ruler?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think Earth would have reached this point without a strong hand at the helm?" Jack stared at her, shocked. You're the ruler, but I thought you were just a diplomat, Lara finished for him. That's what I wanted you to believe. I needed you to believe that. It's easier that way. If I'm seen as just a representative, then people don't expect the full weight of what I can do. They don't expect the consequences of defying me. Jack was silent, his mind spinning. He had always admired Lara, her calm, her poise, her intelligence. But now he understood that there was so much more to her than he had ever realized. She wasn't just a diplomat. She was the leader of Earth, the one who had forged the alliances that made humanity a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. But why hide it? Jack asked, still trying to make sense of it all. Why pretend to be something you're not? Lara sighed, her expression softening for the first time. Because the galaxy isn't ready for Earth's true power. If they knew who I really was, they would fear us. They would fear me, and fear leads to conflict. I don't want that. I want peace. I want cooperation. Jack nodded slowly. He could understand that. The galaxy was full of powerful races, many of whom were not keen on humans gaining any kind of power. If they knew that Lara was the one truly in charge, they might try to stop her to stop Earth. But there was still something troubling him. You could have told me, Jack said, his voice quiet. I'm here to protect you, but I didn't know what I was really protecting. Why keep it a secret? Lara turned away, her eyes looking out over the vast alien city below them. Because it's easier this way. If people think I'm just another diplomat, they won't expect anything from me. I can operate in the shadows, pulling strings, making deals, without anyone realizing the full scope of my influence. Jack was quiet for a long moment. He had always trusted her, even when he hadn't fully understood why. But now he realized that she had been playing a game far bigger than he had known, and he had been a part of it without even realizing it. What happens now? Jack asked finally. What do we do? Lara looked back at him, her eyes steady. Now we finish what we came here to do. We secure Earth's place in the galaxy, and we make sure that no one can stand in our way, not the Kranth, not anyone. Jack felt a sudden weight settle in his chest. It was one thing to protect a diplomat. It was another to protect someone who controlled the fate of entire civilizations. But he couldn't back down now. He had made his choice, and he would stand by her no matter what. Understood, Jack said, his voice firm. I'll do my job, I'll protect you. Lara nodded, giving him a small smile. I know you will, and together we'll make sure Earth's future is secure. As they walked back to the meeting room, Jack couldn't help but wonder what was coming next. They had only just begun their mission, but already everything had changed. Earth's fate was no longer in the hands of diplomats. It was in the hands of Lara Hayes, the ruler of humanity. And Jack would stand beside her, no matter where this journey took them. The days after the revelation of Lara's true identity passed by quickly. The meetings continued, with more representatives from different alien species arriving, each one bringing their own hopes, fears, and interests to the table. The stakes grew higher with each new discussion, and Jack found himself more and more involved in the delicate dance of diplomacy, even though he still felt out of place in this world of high-stakes negotiations. Lara, however, seemed completely in her element. She moved through the meetings with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. It was as if the weight of the galaxy itself rested on her shoulders, and yet she carried it effortlessly, as though it were nothing more than a mild inconvenience. Jack couldn't help but admire her, but that admiration also came with a growing sense of unease. She was more powerful than he had ever imagined, and she wasn't the only one who had noticed. One evening, as they sat in the quiet confines of their temporary quarters, Jack asked her about the future. The two of them had become more familiar over the past few days, talking more freely than they had before. Jack felt like he was beginning to understand her, but there was still so much he didn't know. Lara, Jack said, leaning against the edge of the table where she was working. What happens if the negotiations fail? What if the aliens don't agree to our terms? What will we do then? Lara paused, her fingers hovering over the screen in front of her. She didn't look up immediately, as if she was considering his question carefully. Finally, she sighed and glanced at him, her face calm but with an intensity that made Jack uneasy. If the negotiations fail, she said quietly, we won't let Earth fall into chaos. We've already prepared for the worst-case scenario. Earth is not just a planet anymore, it's part of a larger, more dangerous game, and I will do whatever it takes to protect it. Jack nodded slowly, trying to understand what she meant. It was clear that Lara was always thinking several steps ahead, but the thought of failure was something he hadn't considered. He had been so focused on protecting her and making sure everything went smoothly that he hadn't thought about the possibility of things going wrong. "We've been preparing for this for a long time, Jack," Lara added, her voice softer now. "This mission, these negotiations, they're part of a much bigger plan, but we can't afford to fail." Before Jack could respond, a sharp noise interrupted them, an alarm followed by a voice over the intercom. "Alert! Intruder detected. All personnel to secure positions immediately." Jack's heart skipped a beat. The calm, controlled atmosphere that had settled over them was shattered in an instant. He turned to Lara, his instincts kicking in. "What's happening?" Jack asked, moving toward the door. Lara was already standing, her face serious. "We've been compromised. Stay close to me, Jack. Don't let anyone in who doesn't have clearance." Jack followed her into the hall, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. The ship's corridors were eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the security systems kicking into gear. They moved quickly, keeping low, their footsteps silent against the metallic floor. As they reached the central command room, they found a group of armed soldiers standing guard outside. Their faces were tense, their eyes scanning the hallway as if they were waiting for something or someone. "What's going on?" Jack asked one of the soldiers, his voice low. "We've had a breach, sir," the soldier replied, his hand gripping his weapon tightly. "We're not sure who or what it is yet, but we've detected unauthorized movement in restricted areas. We're securing all entrances." Lara stepped forward, her presence commanding. "Get everyone in place. No one enters this room unless I say so." The soldier saluted her quickly and moved to carry out her orders. Jack watched, still trying to make sense of what was happening. He had been part of many missions, but this felt different. This wasn't just a typical security breach. This was something deeper, something more dangerous. Lara turned to Jack, her eyes serious. "I'm afraid we have a problem," she said quietly. "Someone has betrayed us, someone on the inside. I don't know who yet, but I can feel it." Jack's stomach dropped. Betrayal. The word echoed in his mind. He had never imagined that someone in their group would turn against them, especially not after everything they had worked for. But the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. There had been subtle hints, little signs that something was off. The Karanth's warning, the strange looks from some of the other alien representatives. He had ignored them at first, but now it all seemed to fit. "We need to find out who's behind this," Jack said, his voice tight. "And we need to stop them before it's too late." Lara nodded, her face hardening. "We will, but I can't do this alone, Jack. I need you to help me." "I'm with you," Jack said, his hand gripping his weapon tighter. "Just tell me what to do." They moved through the ship, searching for any clues, any signs of what had happened. The corridors were dark, the usual hum of activity replaced by an eerie silence. As they passed through various sections of the ship, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every step they took seemed to echo in the quiet, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. They reached the security room, where a group of officers were monitoring the ship's systems. The main screen was filled with images of various parts of the ship, but everything looked normal, at least on the surface. There were no signs of damage, no signs of an immediate threat, but Jack knew that something was off. "Show me the footage from the restricted areas," Lara ordered, her voice calm but firm. The officer at the console nodded and typed quickly, bringing up the security footage from several areas of the ship. As the video played, Jack's eyes scanned the screen, searching for anything unusual. But everything seemed normal until he saw a familiar face. It was one of their own officers, someone Jack had worked with before. His name was Mark Lyle, and he had always seemed trustworthy. But there he was, moving through a restricted area, bypassing security systems with ease. "That's him," Jack said, pointing at the screen. "Mark Lyle, he's one of ours. How did he get in there?" Lara's eyes narrowed as she studied the footage. "He's not supposed to be anywhere near that section of the ship, and look at the way he moves. He knows exactly what he's doing. This wasn't an accident." The realization hit Jack like a punch to the gut. Mark Lyle was the traitor, but why? What did he stand to gain by betraying them? And who was he working with? Lara turned to the officer at the console. "Track his location, find out where he's headed." The officer quickly inputted the necessary commands, and the screen updated to show Mark's current position. He was heading toward the docking bay, the very area where the ship would be vulnerable to an attack. "Damn it," Lara muttered, her face hardening. He's trying to sabotage us. We need to stop him before he does any real damage. Jack didn't hesitate. He knew what needed to be done. I'll take care of it, he said, moving toward the door. You stay here, I'll bring him back. Lara reached out and placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. Jack, be careful. He's dangerous now. He's not just a traitor, he's a threat to everyone on this ship. Jack nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation, but he couldn't back down. He had made a promise to protect her, and now he had to protect the entire ship. With that, he turned and made his way toward the docking bay, his mind racing. Who else could be involved? Was Mark acting alone, or was there a larger conspiracy at play? As Jack reached the docking bay, he found the doors slightly ajar. His heart pounded in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth. He pushed the door open slowly, his weapon drawn. Inside, the lights flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Mark was standing near the airlock, his back to Jack as he worked on a control panel. "Mark!" Jack shouted, his voice sharp. "Turn around!" Mark stiffened but didn't turn. "You shouldn't have come, Jack. You don't understand what's really at stake here." Jack's grip tightened on his weapon. "You're a traitor. I'm not going to let you destroy everything we've worked for." Mark turned slowly, his face cold and calculating. "You think this is about loyalty, don't you? It's not. It's about survival. The galaxy is changing, Jack. Earth needs to take its place at the top, and Lara Hayes, she's not the right person to lead us there." Before Jack could respond, Mark lunged at him, knocking the weapon out of his hands. The two men struggled, each trying to gain the upper hand. But Jack was stronger, and with a swift move, he disarmed Mark and held him at gunpoint. "You're not going anywhere," Jack said, his voice cold. "You're coming back with me." Mark sneered, but he didn't resist. Jack had won this round. "They asked me to stand beside her. I didn't know she ruled the galaxy."